Okay, so here we go. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining us this afternoon. In today's session, we're going to be having a look at some of the ways that objects can be manipulated in order to create interactivity in your Flipchart lessons. Today's content really covers some basic features of the software, but I think that even seasoned users of ActivInspire will be able to benefit from some of the examples that I'm planning on showing today. What I really wanted to demonstrate with this session is that you don't need to spend hours creating your Flipchart pages, that sometimes the simplest pages, the simplest features of the software used creatively can be the most effective. So you can see on screen here just a few things that we are going to cover today. Okay, so just to start off with, a very simple page. So the simplest way to interact with objects on the page is by dragging and dropping them. In this secondary maths example, learners are able to make connections within mathematics through a matching exercise, where they have to discuss and decide what representations go together. So you can see around the screen, I've got different representations of the same concepts, okay? So different ways of looking at mathematical equations. Through discussion, the pupils can drag and drop the flashcards to group multiple representations of the same concept. Typically, I would probably start off with this as either individual or paired activity at the desks, where they would have these physical cards at their desks and they would be sorting through them. And then what we could do is, if any questions came up, or if any difficulties, or if anyone's were causing problems, then I could direct everybody up to the display and we could have a look at those and discuss them together to help work through any problems and to consolidate understanding. So for this, as simple as, and bear with me, I'm not going to actually match the right ones together, but I could just pick them up, group them together, and then we could have that discussion about how they match or why they don't, or which that one doesn't match. Let's find another one that goes instead. Okay, so it's just simply having things on the page that I can pick up and move around. Now, these were taken from the old DFE standards units, which are found on the internet and cover the national curriculum for providing such multiple representations like this in cards. So if you are looking for them, they are still available on the internet. To get the cards to use within the Flipchart, all I did was I used the camera tool. So in my desktop tools, I have a camera tool available to me, and I was able to snapshot those and bring them into my Flipchart. What I could also do is save these into my resource library, so I could use these cards in different ways as well. I'm not just stuck with using it in the one way. Okay. Now, I added this page in at the last minute because I wanted to show you another way of just that simple drag and drop. And again, that's all this is I've got information on the page, and I'm going to have my learners can come up, or I can interact with it, where we drag and drop and have a discussion. So what we have here is looking at energy sources in a science lesson, and I've got some different energy sources that we're going to talk about today, all just in a pile up here at the top. So what I could do is ask a learner to come up and drag one of those energy sources onto there, and then I might ask them to choose some of the statements around the side here that are relevant to that particular energy source. So we might pull out renewable, might pull out pollution-free, and then I would want them to tell us why they choose these words, so how these ideas or how these statements match with the energy source that they chose. I could then reset the page. Okay, if we want to move that one off, we could choose another one and have another student come up and do that again. Now, I did make this page a little bit more than just the drag and drop, because as you'll notice, the statements around the edges look like they're a little bit grayed out. And when I drag them into my focus circle, they become dark blue. And that's not by magic. What I've actually done there is I've taken another shape, you can see here, and put it on top so that the focus circle shows through. And what I then used was this translucency slider here to just change it from full to slightly transparent so that those start to come through. They're locked on the page, and that means that the box stays in place when I pull out the things behind it. Okay, so that little bit with layering, just taking that simple idea to the next level. This is another example of drag and drop, and this time I've used object layering within the software to create a page designed specifically for a class discussion. So with my class, we've been studying different religions, and partway through the unit, I decided I wanted to check what they remember. So on the page, I have a number of images that are covering the 4 different religions, and they're hidden behind this orange box, this orange rectangle on the page. Now what I want to do is I want to lock that in place so that when I click here, I don't move the box. I pull the images out from behind the box one at a time. So to lock an object on the page, I just want to select it to get the object edit handles up. Then I'm going to go up to the menu and lock. And what that does is that just locks that particular shape on the page. Okay, and now what I can do is pull those objects out one at a time. So we can have a look at them, we can resize them. If I was on one of our active panels, I could be doing that with 2 fingers, pinching, rotating it, making it nice and big because I have that multi-touch ability. We could have the discussion about what object this is and which religion would we find that in, and then we could drag that onto the one that it belongs in, okay, and place it there. And then we have the next one we can pull out, and we can continue the discussion on the same. So it means that as a teacher, I can have all of the information that I want to discuss ready on the page, but I'm in control of when my class sees it. So it means that instead of some learners jumping ahead, instead of having all of those images just piled on my page and learners jumping between them, I can focus them on one piece of information that we're going to discuss before we move on to the next one. Now this example is a variation of the last one that I showed. Instead of using a shape this time to hide the images though, I've used the camera tool, which we can find under our tools and camera here. I've used the camera tool to take a snapshot of the background. So if I just go up to my design mode, and I'm just going to change that little snowflake from blue to orange. And what that does is it allows me to move any objects on the page that are locked, or if an object has an action attached to it, it disables that action to allow me to edit it. So if I now click here, you notice that there's actually an image down here. And this is what I use to take with the camera tool, just a snapshot of the background. Okay, if I place it back there, I haven't quite got it exact. I can see that it's not, but it's probably not as noticeable to you, or it won't be to your class. And now if I go back into my presentation mode, what this means is that I can pull out statements behind that we can talk about. So those of you who are familiar with critical thinking skills, this is a Diamond 9 activity where I've got a bunch of statements that we're going to pull out, discuss once at a time, and then my class need to decide where on the Diamond 9 they fit. And generally, a lot of the ideas will move around as more information comes out and the discussion progresses. Okay, I'm just going to do a couple more pages, and then I have noticed some questions coming in, so I'll take a little break to answer some of the questions as well. This example builds on that idea of locking and dragging objects in front or behind. So what we've done here is a little trick with layering, and again, I have used the camera tool to help me with this. So the chest is an image that I took from the resource pack that comes with the ActivInspire software. This one is actually from the Subjects resource pack. So when I go to my resources and shared resources, you'll notice I have one down here called Subjects. The top ones install as default when you install the application. The Subjects folder is a separate download and installation. So if you don't have this, then I suggest that you have a look on Promethean Planet to find out where you can download that from, because this has the bulk of the resources that you can use for creating flipcharts. And the great thing about these is that they're copyright free, so you can use them and you can share your flipcharts as you want. Okay, so a great place to get resources to build your flipcharts with. So as I said, this chest is from there. So this is what the chest looks like. Now what I did was I used the camera tool again and took a snapshot of the chest. So we've got it grouped here. I'm just going to ungroup that to show you that I've used the camera tool to just snapshot the front of the chest. And what that means is I can make this two-dimensional item appear three-dimensional by allowing objects to go inside it. Now again, I'm not really allowing objects to go inside it. It all has to do with layering. So let's go into our object browser here for a second to have a look. Okay? So if we look in our object browser, down here I have one called chest, and that is at the bottom of the middle layer. So I can see this is all in the middle layer, and this is at the bottom of the middle layer. And when I click on that, you can see the chest there. I have another object called snapshot here that's at the bottom of the top layer. When I click on that, you'll see that that's that little snapshot of the front of the chest that I took. Now, any numbers that I want to go into the box are in the middle layer of the software. So all of these numbers here are ones that are going to go into the chest or into the box. All of the numbers that I don't want to go into the box because they're not correct, I've put on the top layer. So they will always go on top of the box, okay, because they're in the top layer above everything else. So let's have a look at how we do that with the numbers. So this might be a mass activity, and I want my class to identify the pattern. And I can do that by dragging the numbers and asking my class, do you think this is going to go in the box, yes or no? So we could drag it and we can see that 1 doesn't go in the box. Let's have a look at number 2. And 2 does go in the box. Okay, so what about 3? We know that 1 doesn't go in, but 2 does. So do we think 3 goes in? So it might be assumed that, I think we're looking at odd and even. So let's try that, and that does go in. So that rules out odd and even. So you can see what I'm doing here, and this is the discussion that I would be having with my class as well. Very effective, can be used in loads of different ways, and that just has to do with layering. I've seen really great examples, one that was classifying vertebrates, and they had, is it an insect or not? And it was for younger learners to be able to drag them into a net, and if it was an insect, it would go into the net, and if it wasn't, it wouldn't. Okay. So just before I move on, I am just going to stop there for a second and ask Andy if there are any questions that haven't been answered. I know that my advocates, I have seen Nolene and Anne answering some questions there, which is brilliant, but is there anything that needs clarifying, Andy?
There was a question from Anna. What if the answers are wrong? Is there some sort of feedback? That was earlier on.
Sure, not sure which example that is for, but in the cases that I've done here, all of that would be through discussion. So in none of these ones have I actually set anything to identify if it was right or wrong. The only way I could really do that within the software is containers, and we're not going to be looking at containers today, but we have in other webinars that we've done.
Right, okay, so yeah, similar to that, can I put a sound to show if the answer is right or wrong?
You would do that through containers. So if you create a container, you can set it as a property so that if the correct object is put in it, it will stay and it will play a sound. Yes. As I said, we have done some webinars on where we've talked specifically about containers. I think there's one that's it has actions in the title. So if you do look on our YouTube channel to find out a little bit more about containers if you are interested in doing that.
Well, yeah, Nolene has posted a couple of links in the chat function as well, so to previous webinars and also to the Planet resources that you mentioned earlier.
Great, thanks.
A question's just coming from Serge. Where did you go to view the layering?
To view the layering, I went into my browser window. Okay, now if you don't have this, if it's closed down, you just go to View and browsers. And the one that I look at to see the layers is the third one from the right, and it's Object Browser. Now, if you are using the primary interface, you would still go to your browser window to find this as well, and it will be the first one that's in your options, because these two are actually on your toolbar.
Okay, that's great.
Okay.
Questions?
Perfect. Okay, so just before I move on to the next idea, this is another drag and drop one, and I toyed with whether or not I was going to show you this one. It's a fantastic example of a user-created flip chart that I found on Promethean Planet, and it takes that idea of layering and drag and drop to a whole other level. Now, I'm not actually going to break this down and go through how I made it, because it would probably take the whole rest of this session. But what I wanted to show you was that, you know, a great example of the potential of what the software can do when you have a better understanding of how it all works. And just to show you, with these, what I can do is, if I drag first quarter, now I think that's about the only one that I know off by heart, I could drag that there. So you see the word disappears, and I see the image of what the moon would look like at that. Drag the next one, and we can see there. Okay, and our new moon, drag over here, text disappears, and we just have the image. Now, if you really like this example and you really want to find out how it was put together, then one of the best ways of learning the software is to go onto Promethean Planet and download some of those flip charts that some wonderful users have shared up there that show off the features of the software very well, and deconstruct the page. So take it apart to figure out how it works and put it back together again. So if you are interested, do have a look for this on Planet. You can see the Planet member's name who shared this is down below there. Okay, so we're moving on to slightly different here from looking at that idea of locked and purely drag and drop. So again, this is another page that I found on Promethean Planet, and I adapted it slightly. So they used actions, but we're not talking about actions in this webinar. So I changed it slightly to suit the way what I wanted to show you guys tonight. So what I have is my little suitcase here, and behind the lid of my suitcase, or in my suitcase, you can see I have some collective nouns hidden, some words that are collective nouns, and they're hidden there in my box. Now, what I can do, because I use the camera tool to take a snapshot of this, they're two separate objects. And if I click on it, I can get the object edit handles here. And this is one of the first things that I ever remember seeing with the ActivInspire software that I thought was just fantastic. If I take that little handle down at the bottom here, what I can do is I can resize the object, but doesn't that look like I'm lifting the lid of the suitcase up? I could then choose the word, or I could have a student come up and do that, choose the word, and then they could close the lid of the suitcase again so we could get another student to come up. So that is so simple to do. All it is resizing the object. So I select the handles, so I select the object to get the handles up, grab that bottom handle, and I'm just going to resize it to make it look like that suitcase is opening. And this is another variation of that. And in this case, we were going to have a look at famous people from the past. And so to get my class in the mood, we decided that we were going to travel back in time. And to do that, we were going to be like Doctor Who, and we were going to use our TARDIS. So I was able to find a picture of a TARDIS off the internet and bring it into the Flipchart. What I could do as well, if I wanted to, is I could actually find the sound file for the TARDIS, because there's some really great little sound files that I can get on the internet, so we could have that full-on experience of going back in time. What I then did was I used the camera tool to snapshot the doors of the TARDIS. So I've got two separate doors there. And then once again, I can select a door and use that handle, this time on one of the sides, to open it up. And we can reveal the historical figure who we're going to look at today. So we're opening up those doors to have a look at who we're going to talk about there. Okay, so again, such a simple concept, but really, really effective, that idea of the door opening and closing, or the suitcase opening and closing to get more information. Now, color is another simple yet effective way to create interactivity. So take this page here, for example. It doesn't look like there's much there, but in actual fact, this is because I've once again hidden some of the information away from my learners, and I want to reveal it through the discussion that we're going to have. So to hide the words on the page this time, what I did was I colored them the same color as the background. So if I just drag my cursor along there, you'll see that there are actually objects on the page. You just don't see them because they're colored the same color as the background. What I want to do in this lesson is we're looking at types of words, noun, verbs, and adjectives. And I want my class to find a word, have a look at it, and decide what type of word it is. So to find the word, they're going to use the little orange arrows at the side. So what I could do is drag that to find a word on there. Television, we can then have the discussion, is it a noun, verb, or an adjective? When we decide what it is, we can then choose the color and color that in to be a noun, verb, or an adjective. So in this case, it's a noun, so I want to color it blue. And we could then get another student come up to move on to the next one. Okay, so very simple way of building a little bit of interactivity in, and doesn't take a long time to create. Now, one of the other things I just wanted to point out about this page is if you look here in my object browser again, all of the items on the page are in the middle layer. So once again, we've used layering here. In order for those arrows to go behind my hidden words, I just needed to make sure that the hidden words are above the arrows in that layer. So you can see that the arrows are underneath it. And that's why when I move it around, it will always highlight those words that are hidden on the page. Okay, this is another one with color, and I'm sure that this is one that many of you have seen before. Might not be this exact page, but something quite similar to this. And I always think that it's worth revisiting because it can be used in so many different ways. So this particular page has been done with a lower secondary maths context, but I've seen the same technique used in lots of different subject areas for many different ages. The idea is very versatile. So the three colored columns on the page reveal different information. So in the first column, we can see the fraction. In the second column, we can see the decimal. And in the third column, I can see all two options there, the fraction and the decimal. So all of this is just a simple trick of color. You can't see the decimal in the first column because it's the same color as the background. So I'm just going to use my fill tool to change that so you can see it. Okay, so now you can see that I always had the fraction and the decimals there. It's just you didn't notice the decimal because it was the same color as the background. If I slide this once more, you don't notice the fraction because it's the same color as the background. And when I move it to the third column, the background is different than both the fraction and the decimal, and that's why they show up. Okay, so not a difficult page to do, but very effective. Now, the other thing that I have done here is I have set my objects to only move horizontally. So I've restricted the movement. And this makes it much nicer and much more effective than my learners coming up and being able to drag those anywhere. In order to put a restrictor on an object, you want to just select the object, and then you're going to go into your browser, but this time you're going to go into your property browser. And if you come right down to the bottom here, you have one called Restrictors. And what I want to do under Can Move is I want to change it from freely to horizontally. Now there is one little quirk that I know about this, so I'm just going to click in a couple other fields here and then come out of there. Now when I move this, you can see it hasn't picked that up, and it's a little quirk with the software that I do know about. So all you need to do is go in there again, set that property again, and this time it should stick, and now it will move horizontally. So if it doesn't work the first time, just go back in and put that restrictor on again, and it will work the second time. Okay. Again, using color, I've adapted this page from a modern foreign language flipchart that I found on Promethean Planet. Now, firstly, I want to make sure that my class know what we're talking about. So they have to decide which of these are objects that would go in this particular room. But we're not going to get very far if half my class don't know what la cuisine means. So what I've done is on the page, I've hidden an object, and I've used the Translucency slider to make it transparent. So I can just slide that along so we could say, okay, so we are talking about the kitchen. So now that I've got everybody on board, everybody knows what we're going to talk about, we can then go on to decide which of these objects you would find in the kitchen. For this task, the learners need to read the French words, translate them into English, or recognize them as in their English equivalent, and then decide if they're objects that will be found in the kitchen. Once they have decided which ones belong in the kitchen, we can then drag them onto the oval to check. So if they are correct, they will go on top of the oval, and we also have that little drop down or that little label underneath in English as well, so it has a translation to English. Slightly different if they are incorrect. So incorrect, and this has to do with layering, I can then just pick that up and drag it and put it behind my oval, so we know that it's incorrect if it doesn't go in the kitchen. Okay? Now, just before I move on to the next one, I'm just going to stop there, Andy, and ask if there's any questions that came in.
There was a question from Alexander. Is it possible to get the flip chart Janice is just talking about and to learn from it? So I'm guessing, what's the easiest way to access the flip chart functionality and have a play around?
Yes, that's no problem. What we can do is I can share this flip chart on Promethean Planet afterwards, and we'll make sure that we let people know where they can find it after the webinar has ended.
Yeah. Other than that, Nolene has shared a link to Active Tips, so that's in the chat window there. Okay. Perfect. Thank you. Yes, Active Tips are a fantastic way to learn how to do all of these little things that I've shown you. So the Active Tips take one feature of the software, show you how you can use it in a learning and teaching context, and also show you how you can build with it as well. Okay, so we're not too far along. We've got a few more to go here, as you can see by the number of my pages at the top. But I will try and move through them relatively quickly because they aren't difficult concepts. So I've shown this next tool I'm going to focus on already in a couple examples, but I felt that it was worth revisiting on its own. And what I'm talking about is the Translucency slider. To find this, I select an object to get up the object edit handles, and then you can see here the little one that's the orange ball is my Translucency slider. And I've lost my place. Give me 2 seconds to find where I am. My Translucency slider. Okay, so what I can do here is, if I use my Translucency slider, I've actually got two pictures, one on top of the other here. And with my Translucency slider, I can slide that to reveal the image underneath. So what I'm doing is I'm making the top object transparent so that we can see through it to see the one underneath it. This is a great idea if I want to hide and show something, if I want to reveal a correct answer, but really, really great if I want to show something that changes over time or then and now. The other fantastic thing about this is I could annotate on top of it. So what we could do is just take our pen tool and draw round that, the top picture. And because they're separate objects on different layers, when I slide this, my annotation stays and we can really get a good idea of how the ice caps have melted from 1990 to 2012. Okay, so another really simple idea, but very effective, and that can be used in quite a lot of different ways. Okay, next thing I'm going to talk about is the grouping of objects. And again, this goes with layering as well. So grouping objects is another great way of hiding information, but giving learners some guidance on where to look for it on the page. So if we were to go back to that RE
example that we used at the beginning. So if we come back here, the way that I know where the objects are here is that underneath that shape, I just have them stacked on top of each other. So when I click on the shape, and because it's locked, I'm actually clicking on the first object underneath it. So all it's doing is pulling it out in order of where I have those in that pile, stacked in that pile. Okay? The example here is slightly different because what I had was a much bigger area that I wanted to hide objects underneath. So in this case, the objects are being hidden under the moon. And I say I, but in actual fact, as you can see, I didn't create this one. This is another fantastic example from Promethean Planet. So in this example, the teacher has helped the students to know where to go on the moon to pull out an object. And they're going to pull it out to reveal a picture of the different phases of the moon. So instead of just trying to drag anywhere and hoping that they get an object, and sometimes not, and especially if most of them are gone and they're dragging forever trying to find something, what they can do is choose a star, pull the star out, and then that will show the phase of the moon, and then they decide where that goes on the line. And I'm sure that's not correct, but you get the idea. So I can pull out another one, and I think I know that one, full moon, so we can put that one there. Okay. So a nice way of instead of just having them hidden under there, helping the learners find out where it goes, and using the stars ties in really nicely with this activity as well. This is another example that I found from Promethean Planet, and I've actually found it from a resource pack here called Layers and Group Resource Pack. And I love this because it's a really simple one for younger learners when we're looking at sentence structure and sentence writing. So what we've got here is a whole bunch of grass down at the bottom, and I've got butterflies in my grass, but you might notice behind there we've got some words as well. So the way this has been set up, if we go back into our layers again, is that the text is in the middle layer, but the grass and the butterflies are on the top layer. Okay, so it means that even though a piece of text is grouped with a butterfly, the text goes behind the grass and the butterfly stays on top because it is higher up in the top layer than the grass is. So they could then pull up the little butterflies to reveal the words, and then they could use these to help them to build a sentence. Okay, a really simple little idea, but I love it, and it's just so visual and really appeals to me as being a primary teacher. Now, I toyed with taking this example out as I've already got so much content to cover tonight, but I decided to leave it in because I think it demonstrates a really great way to manipulate text on a page. So instead of having all of the text from the soliloquy visible on the Flipchart page, you can use layering to create a window in the background, which enables you to scroll the text, only revealing a small amount at a time. So if I go into design mode here and click on my page, you'll see I've got objects here that look like the background, but they're actually a snapshot that I've taken and just placed on top, and one at the bottom here as well. Okay, and then I've locked those in place that they don't move. The text is a full piece of text that I have just made sure that it is behind those two snapshot objects that I've taken. Okay, and what I've also done is selected that text and changed the restrictor in my object properties so that the movement is restricted to only scroll vertically or only move vertically. And this way I can create this nice little scroll of text. So I can have all the text there that we're going to discuss, but I can reveal it to my class in small parts. The other thing that I have on this page is, again, that idea of grouped objects and tabs. So we can pull a tab up that has a question. We could complete that activity, hide that tab away, and go on to a next one. So I don't always have to create hundreds and hundreds of pages because I can take one page and use ideas like these little tabs, question tabs, to use it in multiple ways. Okay, just before I move on to the next one, and I think the final idea, I'm going to stop again. Andy, are there any questions that need answering?
No, I think you've covered everything off.
Okay, perfect. I hope that everybody is enjoying this and finding the examples I've chosen tonight useful. But I will just crack on then, and we'll see if we've got any questions at the end. Okay. This is a lower primary example, and what I've used here is the magnetic board page. And this can be found, this actually comes as default with your software. So if you look in your resources under shared resources, activities and templates, and then we go into activities, you've got one here called alphabet activities. So you can see that I've got these 2 pages here that have my alphabet. Now what they've done this time, and the feature of the software I want to look at with regards to objects now, is drag and drop. So all of these little letters, when I hover over top of them, they have a little hand that comes up with a plus. And it means that these are drag and drop. So I have infinite copies of that letter that I can drag out. And it drags out much more nicely on my page, I think with my pen on my display. With my mouse here, I just keep dropping it and having to go back. But it is making infinite copies of those that I can keep pulling out. So what we could do is I could bring up a little word here, a little picture. So we're looking at CVC words, 3-letter words, and I want my class to come up. And can they spell this on the line? So we could spell cat, and we could reset that page and have a student come up and use another one. And this is just using drag and drop. To set drag and drop onto an object, what you need to do is select the object, go up to the object edit menus, and then you want to do drag a copy. Okay, I said drag a drop, it should be drag a copy. So once I click that, now you can see that that little hand is on my bat, and now every time I click on my bat there, I make a copy. So I have the infinite number of copies that I can make of that as well. I like this one. This is a secondary music idea that I found on Promethean Planet again that uses this concept. So you can see that they've created the notes down here and musical notation as well that I can use. So I can set drag and drop on any object that's on the middle, top, middle, or bottom layers of my software. So in this case, I've just got an annotation, and I can pull that up. Maybe I can't pull that up. There we go. I could pull that up and put that on. Okay, so I can create these drag and drop actions on my page. Okay. Now, just to finish off, I just want to remind people that if you do have one of our active panels, they are multi-touch. So all of the examples that I've shown you tonight, you can in actual fact do with multi-touch. So you could have several students coming up and being able to interact with it and not just limited to one. So I'm just going to ask quickly, are there any questions before we finish off tonight, Andy, that need addressing?
There's a question from Maria. How did you do the 1, 2, 3 question tabs in the Macbeth Flipchart?
Yeah, all those they're just grouped objects, and I've pulled them up from below. So I can hide things off the surface of the Flipchart page on the world behind it as well. So it's just simply creating an object that I can drag up and down. Okay?
Okay. That's it. That's the last question.
Okay. So just to remind everybody, I have mentioned Promethean Planet several times today, but it is a huge wealth of fantastic information to get you up and running with the ActivInspire software. So please, if you haven't registered for your free account, I do recommend that you get on there and have a look at it. I know that Anne and Nolene have been giving you some links and talking about Promethean Planet tonight, and they've highlighted a couple things, like the teacher-created resources that are available, the active tips to help you learn how to do a lot of the things that I've shown you tonight, and also the fantastic resource packs that we have available to help you to create your own Flipchart content. And
sorry, Janice, we have one question coming from Bianca there. Sometimes you stay in designer mode, sometimes you go in presentation mode. What is the best when you're in the classroom?
In the classroom, I would always be in presentation mode. The only reason why I go into design mode is if I want to edit something on my page. And what that allows me to do is move objects that I have locked on a page, or I can move an object that had an action or a sound file attached to it without playing the sound or the action. So when you're presenting it with your class, there's very little reason for you to need to go into design mode when you're in front of them.
Great.
Okay. So as I said at the beginning, all of our webinars are recorded. So if you did have difficulty with sound, well, you're probably not hearing me now, but it is recorded and you will be sent a link to it afterwards. So I'm just going to pass you over to Andy. Thank you very much for everybody for joining us again tonight. And Andy, I'll let you just wrap us up at the end here.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today. So I'm sure that Janice has given you some great ideas for ActivInspire. It was another jam-packed session, but as we've mentioned, the session will be available on YouTube within the next couple of days. We always like to hear your feedback as well, so if you could leave any comments that you have for us on the chat session, that would be nice. And if you have any further questions, feel free to drop us a line. We've posted our social media accounts there. So yeah, give us a follow and drop us a line. Finally, we'd love you to visit our new ClassFlow website. So ClassFlow is a free teaching and learning platform, and it can be accessed at www.classflow.co.uk. And here you can find free SPAG resources, instant assessment tools, and much, much more. So yeah, that website again is www.classflow.co.uk. So that brings our session to a close. Thanks very much again for joining us, and we hope to speak to you soon.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.